there's a tip that we might be forgetting to tell people when recovering from ransomware.
So Jonathan, you have a tip for anyone who's been a victim of ransomware?
Yeah, so scouring for stories for today, I noticed Krebs on Security had posted an article about this company that he had been following, I believe since November last year. I think Virtual Care Provider was the name. So they got attacked with ransomware around November last year, and he was following the events that happened through this. And so his article is something that when I'm giving ransomware advice of people, when people ask me about it, I've just never thought of saying it. And the main thing for everybody watching is that you shouldn't just change your business-related passwords. That whatever passwords you were using in that computer are likely also compromised.
Right.
So stuff you have saved in your web browser, stuff that if you just went to a banking website, your personal email, anything, Facebook, Twitter, anything like that was on that computer is likely also compromised. So one of the main reasons for this that is explained in there, and you can look into it, is that one of the ransomware that was used in this case towards this company was the Ryuk ransomware. Yeah. Super popular, I guess, right now with whatever actor that has been using it, possibly multiple actors, we don't know, since I think is being sold as a kit. And in this case, they had, the most common way of deploying this has been, I believe, some kind of phishing email with maybe an attachment using something like Emotet, like downloading Emotet as a downloader. Then it gets a TrickBot in between, which is another Trojan.
TrickBot is super prevalent right now, let's put it that way.
But it's also really good at stealing credentials.
Right. Yeah.
And then they use that as a second downloader for Ryuk.
Ryuk. So that's like the final stage.
But while people are obviously trying to fix their ransomware issue, they forget that 2 other payloads were deployed, or might forget that 2 other payloads of things were deployed that did other things. So I think that's kind of the main moral here of the story. And the interesting thing, the way that I guess Krebs kind of figured this out was he was in communications with this company about their events, and these are people that had third-party backups offline, so they were able to not pay this ransom.
Okay.
And they were in the middle of figuring out what happened and how to make sure all their systems were cleaned, and Krebs or somebody from his team got an email from the criminals saying we still have access to certain things.
And it's interesting how Krebs is like the go-between guy between criminals and the real world.
Right. And I guess he contacted some of the people that were consulting on this, and they were like, yes, we have seen, credentials for like 300 different sites that were not related to just, it was Facebook and Twitter and all those things that I listed.
Things that they didn't think were in scope.
Including Office 365 accounts, the things that people, my favorite was LastPass master passwords.
Yeah,
so that's access to every other password, possibly if you don't have 2-factor or some kind of second factor authentication in there. That's kind of what the story was about, and what the tip here is. Yeah, of course, the defense in depth and layer security, that's a given. Like, scan your attachments in your emails if you can. Make sure that you have backups that can be accessed in the case of. But also, after you're cleaning up, every possible password that ever touched that network is probably also compromised. Just change it.
I always say reset your email password first, because most other websites use your email as the password reset mechanism. So you want to make sure that one where everything funnels back to, or a lot of things funnel back to it unless they use the two-factor authentication or one-time PIN over a phone or something like that. But a lot of them use email. So if you'll ensure or have a better insurance that less passwords are going to be compromisable by making sure your email is covered first.
Because it's targeted ransomware, by the time you get their files encrypted, they've already done all the lateral movement. So there's another reason why you should know that they've already gotten administration and a lot of things, maybe even your Active Directory controller. So at that point, if you're already hit by the ransom, assume everything was compromised, because they only deploy it once they know they have a good target.
Right. One that they think they can
pay.
extract some money.
And they will,
from.
correct.
Right.
So they've been in your system probably for months, which is what happened in
right.
this
Figuring
case.
out what you are, what are your crown jewels, and can I extort you?
Correct.
For if I can, prohibit your access to them. Right.
So to me, it was just one more thing to learn, and it was interesting to just something that you think it makes sense, but you never thought of it before.
Right. Yeah.
And if possible, again, if whatever you're using allows for software or hardware token,
yes,
please one-time pass. Just enable it and use it.
Yeah.
And clearly, this is a medical or they provide care to nursing homes. Like, if whatever you're using allows you to use, and if it doesn't, figure out how to get it to that point, because I think that also will slow the attacker down a lot.
Right. All right, good. I'm glad that they had backups.
They did.
Because that's usually the big sticking point with a lot of people who do get compromised is that they don't have good backups or they haven't tested recovery.
And I think they were asked for like $1.5 million worth of Bitcoin, which is, that can put someone out of business very,
Yeah, especially a small company.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know how big this particular company was, but it's good to know that they, they had a plan and they were able to recover. But maybe they just forgot a few steps that they need to do as part of that recovery process.
Right.
So it's interesting in the article, so basically what John just mentioned, they had mentioned that they had a third-party assessment. I think it was sometime over this past summer, and they actually started some of these steps. So they got the off-site backups, and so it's kind of interesting timing. If this would have happened 6 months prior, right? Seems like they may have had nothing. But with ransomware, there's obviously the focus is decryption and your data. But you kind of don't think about all the other access, that and all the other potential for various compromise. So you do kind of reset everything and assume everything's been compromised.
Yeah, they had a quote which I think the owner of the company had an interesting quote that it was it feels like a company battling a country, and I think that's. Yes, the resources that an attacker group might have versus them trying to, do their regular business while trying to, like you said, follow up on the security assessment that told them, hey, you have this gap.
Right.
Like, sometimes there just might not be enough time, or they might already be in your system and they realize that you're patching things, and they might be like, we got to pull the trigger. And that could have happened in this case. I don't know particularly, but if they were already in their systems and they're like, oh, they're starting to patch everything because they're figuring out what the problems were, that's it. We got to pull the trigger now, try to make as much money as we can. So it's
it's always harder for defenders because you don't necessarily know as a defender for your organization every single little hole, and from an attacker's perspective, they only have to get right once to get in, you know what I mean? Right. So not to diminish the skill set that is sometimes required to execute on an attack, but it's much harder to detect and defend in most cases than to attack. So it comes down to manpower and resources. How much time and manpower do you have to protect your network? And you should invest the time, but I think a lot of companies and organizations, especially smaller ones, might not put enough emphasis and resources and money into protecting their own networks until something like this happens, and then they're like, all right, pull out the checkbook, let's fix it, and staff up. So anyhow, looks like they had a plan, so I was glad to see that. Like Mike said, that they had an
least
audit done
started.
prior.
Right.
You know, so like Mike said, if they hadn't, maybe it would have been worse.
If you're a company that is recovering from ransomware, remember to tell your employees, change your personal accounts that were being used on those systems, because it's possible that those passwords were also compromised.